Hello and welcome to another exciting tutorial. Today we're going to be using geometry nodes to create detail in our modeling of a space station. Let's get started. So today's plan is we're going to make this image right here. We're going to finish building out the sort of structure of our space station. We're going to use geometry nodes to accelerate our modeling process so we can get really cool, dynamic, interesting shapes really easily without doing a lot of geometry. So I think you'll be excited to see how we get to this point. It's a great point as well to mention, hey, you can get this project file if you join the Patreon at the second tier. So go check it out if you haven't already. If you join in April of 2022 or in May of 2022, you can get this project file. It'll be available in the downloads folder only for those 2 months. So if you're keen, jump on it now. All right, so we're gonna do kind of a classic slit entrance. So I'll select this face here and hit X delete. And I'll go ahead and delete the bottom face as well. Actually, we might need the bottom face. I'll keep it. I'm gonna hit Alt in edge mode, Alt, click this edge right here and hit E to extrude and then S to scale. And I will bring it in maybe about like that. E again, grab Z, we're gonna go down like this. Let's get rid of this, so you can just see what we're working on. E again, scale, and we're gonna come right in like this, grid fill. So I'm gonna type F3 and type in grid fill. And then in the little drop-down box here, I'll just move my head so you can actually see it. It just hides here when you first use the tool. If you click away, it'll disappear and you'll lose this control. So try not to click away first. I'm going to change the offset just to kind of line this thing up a bit better across the middle of my object, which that looks pretty good. That's right across the middle. And span 8 is good because I want it to match. Simple bending will get rid of the deformation that's kind of happening there. I'm just going to look at this from the top down using 7 on my number keypad. And I want to take these guys here to make the slit. So I'm going to grab faces. I don't want to have this bulge. It's got this slight bulge to it. So what I want to do is actually kind of line up all these vertices so everything's straight. And I'm going to base it on the narrowest one, I think, because I want it to be a narrow slit. So I'm going to come up to these guys here. So if I go to vertex mode, I can turn on snapping and switch to vertex snapping. And now what it's going to let me do is if I grab here like this, I'll switch to global as well to make it a little bit simpler. I can hit G to grab an X, and then I can move my mouse just over this top one and we'll lock this vertex along the X. So I can do the same thing here. X. I can just go through and do this for each of these guys. In fact, I can just go up to the one before it. And then I'll do this one as well, this side. Well, that makes sense. What I'm doing there is I move my mouse up. So click G to grab, X to lock it on the X, and then just move my mouse over the one that I want to borrow the X position from. There we go, great. So these guys are all nice and even now. So I can select all these faces and I'll hit I to inset and move in a little bit, just like so. And then I will hit E to extrude and then grab Z, turn snapping off with Shift Tab is the hotkey. I can grab this guy and just move it down like that. And I'll just go for a little ways for the slit. And then let's see, I think I might just delete those faces. Nice. All right, let's make this a little bit nicer. So I'm going to grab the edges and Alt click there. And I'm going to make a little bevel here with Control B to bevel. And I'll just drag my mouse a little bit just to get a slight bevel on that. Also, I think it might look good if I grab these guys. Actually, I'll Alt click and select this edge loop of faces and then Control plus to expand my selection. That will expand it up to here. And then I can actually Control minus, select one less there. Grab Z and just pull that down a bit. That way we get this nice kind of angled entrance. That's really good. That'll define things a little bit nicer for us. Cool. All right. Now, one of the things I want to do is have a lot of sort of mechanical greebles, which a greeble is, and it's an old model making term in visual effects. We take lots of model parts and you just break them all apart and glue them together onto a surface, to create like the Death Star or something like that, all these little flat sections. And there's a lot of ways we could do this, but I actually want to try doing this with geometry nodes. I want to try creating something that's going to let me have different raised sort of surfaces in a grid pattern across this whole surface. I want to see if we can pull this off. So let's go ahead and we're going to pull up our window here. We're going to switch to geometry nodes. And in the geometry nodes editor, make sure I can actually see this guy. I'm going to click new to create a new geometry nodes. I'm going to call this let's call it Grebe for Greebles. And I want to first create more geometry because there's not a lot of geometry on these guys. For someone who was subdivide, I'm going to make a lot more geometry out of this. So I'm going to go Shift A and subdivide mesh, and just drop this here. Let's have a look at how it changes the visual presentation. It doesn't really change the visual presentation. We can have a look at the wireframe mode to see all the different geometry. You can see, yeah, we get a lot of geometry. And this is what we're going to use to kind of define these offset patterns. All right, so next step is I want to create a material texture, or a texture that we can use to offset the position of these faces. And what we're going to use is the Voronoi texture. It's going to be a bit hard to visualize here. So what I can actually do is show it to you first in the shader editor, which is probably a better way of visualizing what we're going to be looking at. So I'm going to switch to viewport shading. Actually, we'll go to render view, but I'll turn off my scene world and scene lights just so we can see this really clearly. If I create a new shader and I grab a Voronoi texture, this is a texture that exists in geometry nodes as well, so we can see the effect in both. I'm going to grab a color ramp, and I will use a constant color ramp, and I'll just drag this out, take the distance, plug it into the factor, and take the color and base, plug it into base color. Now you can see you get these circles, but if we switch from Euclidean here to Chebyshev, we're actually going to get these cool Greeble looking patterns. We can change the scale, whatnot, and increase or decrease these guys. Let's create that same thing. So let's going to go here and grab a Voronoi texture in geometry nodes. We'll drop it here. Grab a color ramp as well. And drop this here. We'll plug the distance in like this. And I might set this to constant. Move this one here, except let's create like one other one. Click the plus to get another pip. And this one, I'm going to drag it up and do like a medium gray. So we've got 3 different layers of it. Then what we're going to do is move these guys. I'm going to go ahead and turn this shader off as well, so it's not confusing us. Let's get rid of that. And let's go back to wireframe view so we can really see what's happening. All right, I'm going to grab the set position node. This is a node that we can use to set the position of every vertex on our surface. And I want to do the same thing we did with the asteroid. So if you remember the asteroid, we multiplied, we used the normal node to multiply this noise to create the different craters. So we're gonna use the same system. Basically, we can jump straight over to the crater, in fact. So all we really need, just like last time, is a normal node and a multiply node, and then our noise pattern feeding into a color ramp. And we can use that in the offset. So go back to Greeble, let's grab the normal node, and we can drop this here. And let's grab a vector math node, set it to multiply, plug the normal in, and then plug the color in. And then we're going to take the vector and plug it into the offset. And that's kind of a cool start already. Let's see what this looks like shaded. Yeah, wow, that's awesome. Now we want to regulate this a little bit. So instead of Euclidean as well, we want to switch to Chebyshev. It's going to give us the square patterns. Now let's come over here and let's grab another vector math node, or even let's just grab a math node and just drop this here and set this to multiply. And now we can shift drag to bring this down. All right, so it's not quite going to work the way I was hoping it would. I mean, it doesn't look great. There would be some applications for this, but this just looks like a mess. So, but we're still going to use it. We're still going to use something to kind of create a cool shape. So I'm going to take my scale down, and I'm also going to take down my subdivisions, I think. So I'm going to take this down to 1. This will help kind of clean up some of those jagged edges. And now it's just about finding a position for things that looks cool. It's going to give us a neat overall shape. I'm just going to adjust the multiplication. I might bring it up a bit like that. And we could take the random down. That could be interesting because that'll give us these nice sort of clean patterns. So I'm just going to fiddle with this now and find some interesting shapes. This is pretty cool. I think it kind of gives me a nice sort of, I don't know, airlock look that I really enjoy. So I went with this Voronoi texture. It's got a scale of 0.710. Randomness is turned down to 0. We're getting around Chebyshev. I've got the white pip at the position 0.439, and my multiply is set to 0.13. That's going to give us all this cool stuff. Now we need to make some adjustments to the mesh so that we can get this the slot to be open again. So if I just come over here to my modifiers tab, I click this to turn on showing the modifiers in showing the geometry nodes modifier in edit mode. Let's switch to transparent view. And yeah, so I'll just alt click in here. Maybe I'll just alt click the edges, the base. And if I scale X, it should help me to open. Now what's neat about this is we've got this crazy thing, the system at play, right? So we can come in now and turn up transparent mode. I could select, say, a couple of these faces, like this and like this, for example, and hit E to extrude, grab Z. And as I move these guys, they are going to be affected, depending on where the noise pattern is, by the geometry nodes. So you can see if I bring them down, this is where it hits the noise pattern. And so those guys are going to get affected like that. So just a cool way of adding in some extra random detail. Now I do want to kind of make this look a little bit nicer by coming over here to my modifier stack. And after the geometry nodes, I'm going to go and add in a bevel. And to get it to work, you have to switch to %, which is the mode that will function well with such bizarre edges like this. And I'm going to set, if you just increase the % here, you'll see the bevels will start to happen. And I'm going to increase this up to 3. Nice. So let's put a shader on this to kind of help complicate it even further. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back over to the shader editor. I'm going to click new to create a new material. And for this material, we're going to turn metallic all the way up. I want this to be a really metallic material. And I'll take my base color down, maybe to like a silver, like sort of a mid-gray. And then let's grab that. Let's do that Voronoi setup. So Voronoi texture, set this here. We'll switch it to Chebyshev and let's grab a color ramp. And we'll bring that over here. And distance, we're going to plug this in here. And let's take the color and we're going to put this into a bump node. So let's add in a bump node and we will plug this into the height. And here at the normal, we'll plug the normal into the normal. All right, now let's switch this to constant and move this pip kind of over a little bit to get these nice machine lines. And we can increase the scale. And I might do multiple layers of this. So I've got one here, the scale set to, let's set it to 40. Random is full set to 1, and the white here is set to, the white pip is at 0.679. And let's mix in another one at a different scale. So I'll duplicate this and this, and we'll plug the distance into the color. And then I'm going to grab a mix RGB shader, or not shader, mix RGB node, and plug this in here, and plug this in here. And then for this one, what we can do is increase, maybe take the scale down. So this will be a really large scale, and I can bring my node in. So I've got more kind of pronounced lines like that. Now, if I want to make these lines like a little thicker, I could always add in another pip like this, a black one, and stick it on the other side here of this white, and that'll create a double line. All right, let's see if there's any other edits we can do to make this even cooler. What happens if we extrude this? This does do some cool stuff. You can see how that geometry nodes is really helping us. Let's inset this, bring it in. Yeah, look at that really nice complex shape. You can see how powerful geometry nodes can be. You can use it to create really interesting systems. Let's create a loop cut. Control R to do a loop cut. Bring that up. There you go. Geometry nodes automatically make something cool for us. Let's do another one here, and Control R. That's just really neat. Okay, so here we are back in the scene that we started in last time we made these asteroids. I've just kind of turned down the displacement a bit so that I could actually see the craters a little bit better. What I want to do is kind of model out a base. So I'm thinking of like one of this like big cylindrical area up one side that things can enter into. But I want to try and have some snaking paths that kind of create some cool alcoves and things. So let's go ahead and just jump into edit mode. Now, I'm going to correct my view. If you ever get your view tilted like this, you can actually just click on here to correct it, and that helps a lot, just kind of keeping things balanced. Now, I want to see the effect of my displacement and everything like actually in the render view. So I'm going to turn all that on. I'm going to come over here, and first thing we can do is we click this button. It'll show us everything in, there we go. So these two buttons right here will cause the edit mode to be deformed as well. And subdivision surface as well, we could do that here, that we can see everything. I'm gonna turn it down as well. 5 is a bit intense. All right, I'm gonna start by picking a side here. And I'll select these guys with holding shift and clicking, get those triangles there. And I'm going to hit E to extrude, and I'll turn on my handles as well, just by coming over here and clicking this button. And I wanna set this to normal. So these are the different orientations that I wanna transform faces with. Global is where you can see the handles, they match the kind of the world space. they're lined up, like the green is lined up with the green and the red's lined up with the green. If I switch this to local, it's going to be lined up with sort of the local coordinates, but that's going to be kind of weird at a bizarre angle. If I go normal, this will actually cause it to line up with the normal or the direction that the faces are pointing. So you can see the blue arrow is kind of pointing out in the same direction that these faces are facing. So now I can pull this in. Now we are going to get some weird stuff with the displacement. So we should probably turn it off, to be honest. So let's turn off the displacement. I'll just turn all these off. And we can just see our asteroid. We'll probably just sculpt it out. All right, let's grab the back half right over here. And I'm going to turn on proportional editing with this little button here. And I'm going to grab, actually I'll hit G and Z, and then I'll roll my mouse wheel. And that will allow me to expand this circle. And the bigger the circle is, the more of the mesh I'll grab. So I'm just going to grab it out like this a little bit. Just kind of elongate the shape. And then let's take a couple of these, maybe these right here, and I'm going to hit I to inset, which will inset those, and I can push them in. I'll turn off proportional editing. E again to extrude, and so I'm going to try and make like a tunnel. So I'll rotate a little bit, maybe on the X, and then E again, and I'll push this up. So I'm just kind of cutting through the asteroid a bit. This is what I'm thinking we'll do, is we'll just like kind of sculpt out some interesting shapes. All right, so how would we connect something like this? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different faces. So we need to find 5 equivalent faces to then connect them up to. So let me scale on the X to kind of bring this one in a little bit. I might grab this vertex right here and just kind of bring it in a little bit closer. And let's join it up maybe to these guys. So what I can do is I can grab these, just making sure I have the same number, hit E to extrude and grab this out. E again. And I'm just kind of getting it, roughly in the same spot. And then what we can do is we can actually just delete these faces. So X, delete faces, and then select these faces, holding down Shift, and X to delete them. And then if I go to the edge mode, hold down Alt, I can select this edge loop, and then hold down Alt plus Shift, and that will increase my selection to this edge loop as well. And then what I can do is type F3, and type in bridge edge loops, and that will connect those guys up for us. And then I can hit Control R to make a loop cut, and just do a loop cut right there in the middle, adjust that a little bit. Now I get this nice loop. It looks gross right now, but if we turn on subdivision surfaces again, you can see we end up with this really cool kind of shape there to the asteroid. Let's hold down Alt and see what kind of loops we can get. I want to select all these guys, hit E to extrude and pull this out. Let's kind of make this entrance a little more regular. I'm just going to grab some of these faces, move them a little bit. It's kind of getting a cool shape. And it'd be nice to have a really good profile. And a profile is sort of the outline of an object. If you just picture everything like the background black and our object completely white, think about an interesting shape. That's a good way to kind of plan out a bizarre or any kind of character design, even like, thinking about a shape like that. Okay, there we go. So I've got some mesh. It's looking pretty cool. So we just grab that face and for this one, I'm going to hit plus to create a new material slot for this object. Click new to create a new material, and then I'm going to click assign. And that will assign this material to the face that is selected. I'm going to switch this to an emission shader just by clicking up here, surface, and hitting E, which automatically loads an emission shader. I'll crank this up, jump back into the camera, and have a look at this in wireframe mode. And yeah, you can see right away, we get that glow coming from inside. Now, this is such a cool little system that we've built using geometry nodes in this shader. It'd be cool to take this and actually kind of place it around and use this system to like create other mechanical sections in our asteroid. So leave edit mode. Let's create another object. Let's create just a mesh cube. Let's position it over here. Let's maybe scale it on the Z. And let's just create some structure on this one. So I'm going to hit Control R and roll my mouse wheel. That will create 2 loop cuts. I'll take my face here and I'll hit E to extrude, grab X, just kind of drag that out, and let's go here, E, grab X, bring that over here, Control R. I'm just kind of randomly creating some stuff. All right, so with a bunch of random stuff like that, let's come over here and let's add in the Grebe metal and the geometry nodes modifier and the Grebe modifier. Okay, so not too exciting on that one. Maybe if we add in more subdivisions, like if I come here and put a subdivision surface first, set it to simple and crank it up. Yeah, there we go. So we get some cool stuff. One thing with this is just making sure that the numbers match so that when it renders, it's used the same number of subdivisions. And also being careful with like the amount of mesh you have in your scene can quickly blow out if you're not careful. Hide inset, bring this in. E to extrude, grab this in. Hide inset, E, grab down. Look at that. It's just really cool. Like these different shapes and stuff. Let's just take this thing, Shift E to duplicate, grab Z, bring it down, rotate X 90 degrees. See how I reuse geometry as well for this kind of like kit bashing, just to save time. Just so it's like, you know what, why waste time modeling things over and over again? Now, it'd be really cool to have some lights kind of scattered across these guys procedurally with geometry nodes as well, but with some kind of like order to them. I want to just create like a basic light. So I'm going to create a mesh primitive and we'll go for a UV sphere. Let's create, actually, we've already got a glowing material. So let's assign that material to it. So let's go to set material for this thing. Plug this mesh into it and we'll grab I think it's a glowing material. What do we call it? Glow, there it is. Let's try first, we'll instance to points. So let's go instance on points and let's drop this here. We're also going to need to do a join geometry, bring this mesh up to it, and then bring this instance group to that. That way we don't lose the actual geometry itself. And I'm going to go ahead and just plug this in to the instance. And we're going to get a ton of these guys. In fact, that's way too many, like destroys my machine when I plug that in. It's because we've got so much mesh because we've subdivided it. So we should probably take the base mesh and use it. So let's take the base mesh and we'll plug it in here for points. And then let's see if this does any better if I plug this into instance. Yeah, that's a little bit better. I've also decreased the UV sphere to segments to 3, rings to 3, and decreased the radius a lot as well. We just need a tiny little radius. You can see how we get these lights that kind of run across the actual surface of the mesh. We don't want it all over the place. We don't want it like every point. So we need to kind of randomly select points or find a way to select just certain groups. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the index, which is the index of every point. Sorry, it's getting a bit cluttered down here. Then let's just do some random math on it. So let's just go for a math node here and bring this up. And let's just, I don't know, let's just start off by dividing, maybe. Divide by 2. So something that's going to work is if we switch this from divide to less than, and then just set a threshold. You can see as we bring that threshold down, like from 1,000 down to 0, it's going to start turning off the lights. The index basically identifies, it's a number that represents each point on our mesh, basically. And by saying, okay, everything that's got an index less than 200, 300, those are the ones we want to put this glowing material on, this sphere thing on. This might be something we want to kind of adjust on a per object basis because every object's going to have different like numbers of vertexes and stuff. So let's actually give ourselves a little bit more control. So I'm going to have another input for the radius of how big these lights are and another one for whatever this threshold needs to be. So now if I come over here to my geometry nodes, I'll be able to select this on a per object basis. So if I select this thing right here, I can come now and just change the inputs here with this. So I could bring the radius down maybe so they're a bit smaller on here. And the threshold, I might want to decrease a bit so that there's not so many. And then with these guys, I can come over and select them. And again, I've got separate controls. So I can make the lights a bit bigger, change the threshold. I hope you really enjoyed this tutorial and you learned a lot. It was really cool using geometry nodes to create some random geometry and random mechanical shape to some of these objects so we could speed up our modeling process. I hope this really accelerates you in your own work. You're able to create cool stuff using geometry nodes and traditional modeling techniques all smashed together. Thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed this tutorial, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way in helping other people discover these videos. And consider joining up on the Patreon or here on YouTube. Both ways really go really long way into helping me continue to make these kinds of tutorials. So if you enjoyed these today, go check that out. You can also get the project file for this project here if you join Patreon at the second tier this month, which is April 2022. You can also get it in the next month as well. So if you're interested in that, go check it out. Thanks again. I'll catch you in the next tutorial. Until then, see you later.